Good morning. This is John Ondrick, President of Mortgage Scholars. Happy to be with you today. And today I had the great pleasure of interviewing somebody I've known for a number of years, Dave Baca. Dave is a vice president, a producing vice president with SunTrust, and he's actually more than that. Dave is one of these people that consistently can hit that $100 million mark and plus. He's always in the Mortgage Originator magazine, not only top 200, top 20, sometimes top 50, but whatever it is, he's in that very elite group. His market area is Anne Arundel County in Maryland, which for the uninitiated, if you know where Annapolis is, it's near Annapolis, and he's closer, between Washington and Baltimore. Anyway, good morning.
Thank you.
Happy to have you with us. I always start at the interviews the same way, have for years, and that is, where are you from, and how'd you get into business? Where'd you go to school, and
Sure.
how'd you kind of, it's like Rod Flowers went to Loyola, and that story.
Sure. I grew up in the Baltimore area, Harford counties, and after high school went to Gettysburg College.
Where'd you go to high school?
Bel Air, just the public school
Okay.
in Harford County. And coming out of college, I got a job with a local bank. Back then it was First National Bank of Maryland. And,
they were big players back then.
Yeah, and went into their management training program. Got involved in the branch system there. Moved from that to being a commercial lender, and spent 5 years there from 1979 to 1984, and then moved on to the mortgage side.
So you understand the concept of debt coverage ratios and NOI and all that other stuff. I took a couple of CCIM courses years ago, and it was just one best thing I ever did. They were hard though; they were killers.
Yeah, it's a long history in the banking world, and it's interesting to watch it transpire and evolve or devolve.
I think devolve, and we'll get into that. I was telling Dave before we started that. Normally, I don't date the interviews, but this is an interesting time. We're in the very latter stages of 2008, and I think what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about some of the things that everyone talks about in terms of sales and whatever. The times are different right now. They're just abominable. The stock market, for the history, to put on tapes, about 8,200. Today, and it's a very, very cruel market here. But we'll get into that. It's all not doom and gloom. People who are really good sales, and I don't want to get ahead of Dave on this, people who are really good salespeople, you talk to Pat Casey or Rod Flowers, they always look upon this as a great opportunity to capture market share and do better. And that's exactly what happens with those who really have that will to succeed. But I want to back up just a little bit, even though we just have about 35 minutes, and ask you, when you started off, you were in a management training program. You then had 5 great years in commercial, which is a wonderful preparation. I've done commercial myself. I was a top agent all Vaughan and Foster years ago, believe it or not, when I was a young kid. And so I had a good real estate background too, and still carry a license, even though I don't use it. And it seems to me that this would be just great preparatory work for you, so that when you got into the residential, it was like, let me at it.
It's a terrific background to know the financial end of transactions and how things come together. And quickly you learn once you move into the mortgage world that it is not so much about the finances, and it's truly a sales position, but now you've got the depth of understanding finance, and that was my big benefit from those 5 years.
Yeah, I know, I have a good friend of mine who, her name's Debbie Bassett, and she's the top executive senior VP with HSBC now. And she started off as a processor and did that for about 4 or 5 years. And I would like to claim the fact I went to her one day and said, you're really good and you have a wonderful personality. Have you ever thought of? And she ended up doing it and ended up making herself just a ton of money. But she had always told me that having that background was absolutely essential to it. You know, with loan officers, in a way, it's very simple. You know your product, know how to close. But there's so many loan officers out there, I think they really don't take the time to really learn the fundamentals that they need to do.
No.
How you feel about it?
No, I think the more depth that you have, and the more that you understand how transactions come together, and you know, it's not going to seem on the surface that it helps you every day, but inevitably there's that depth that creates self-confidence and self-assurance that adds to your success.
Right. So. Yeah, I think so. And when you you know, reached that point, where was your first job? I mean, did you go to a mortgage broker or a mortgage banking company?
Yeah, actually it was a, I guess it was a bank-owned mortgage company. It was Gold Dome.
Oh, okay.
And
but once again, for the old people, they were big players in their day.
Yeah, it was a Buffalo-based bank.
Yeah.
That is long gone.
Long gone. you date yourself by that.
Yeah, and fortunately, in a lot of respects, I've actually worked in a lot of different places. For probably the first 5 years of my career, worked in a different mortgage company every year.
Wow.
And worked for a savings and loan, worked for a broker, small broker, big broker. And in a lot of cases, they did well, or they ran out of checks and it was time to try another place.
Well, you're right. I think this is, I think there's applicability to what happened to you, which happens out there in the market. Same thing happened to me. Isn't that funny? I've never really discussed it on film. But I worked for a company. I was their top loan officer. And one day they came up and said, well, we're only going to be able to settle like 3 loans today, you know, like 10 to settle. And, you know, then I understood the concept of warehousing and whipping the stuff through the warehouse and everything. And it was a nightmare. They were very well-intentioned people, but they didn't know what the hell they were doing.
Right.
And it was just a disaster. And that happens out there. You know, especially when you're new and you really don't know from Adam, and someone said, come work for me, and the guy said, I'll give you leads, I'll do this for you and everything. You walk in there, they give you a Fannie Mae manual and say, you know, good luck to you now. If you have any questions, I'll be right over here, you know, behind this closed door.
One of the oddities of the mortgage industry is that it's always been that there was a great deal of ease of entry, whether you were a loan officer, whether you wanted to own a company. You know, you could be in the mortgage business, and just a stunning concept that it was so easy for people to get involved in such an important aspect of the consumer world, of our economy. Hard to imagine that important of an item is run by some of the people that are involved.
And look about it even today. I mean, ease of entry maybe is a little bit harder. You want to be a broker having, you know, liquid capital. You know, the requirements are a lot higher if you want FHA. Someone told me you have to have $1 million or something in liquid assets. But it used to be, I think, 10,000 when I was younger.
Wasn't much.
And it wasn't much at all, and anybody could do it. And I think that actually precipitated some of the problems we had in the last couple years when the market started to go really goofy 5-6 years ago. A lot of money on the table. You could walk down the street and get a loan, and everybody and his brother did it. And I was talking to someone at the Mortgage Bankers Convention in San Francisco last month, and he was talking about 2 people that he ran into, and just in his travels. One put a tire on his car at like a Walmart, and the other was very similar in nature to it. It's like a salesman at the food store or something. And they ended up engaging in conversation, and they said, "Oh yeah, we were loan officers and everything." And I was making, 150. One case, he said the guy told me he's making like 150, 160,000. And now he's at Walmart.
Yeah.
So easy in, easy out. But let me ask you something in a little more serious vein, and that is, speaking to the loan officers out here, the importance of product knowledge and what you and getting a good solid foundation and learning. You and I seem to have been raised the same way in the business, where you came in, they gave you a book and said, well, we're going to send you out with Joe for 3 days. We're from that school, which is unfortunate, of course, and you either learn the hard way or you die. But maybe you could address that.
Yeah, I think your number one marketing tool over the long run is going to be that you can deliver on what you promise. So the only way to deliver on what you promise is to know what you're talking about. And really understanding the guidelines and knowing which transactions to target, how you can help people, and then actually having the capability to make it happen are critical. So you can only fail to deliver on a promised loan a few times before they'll go find somebody else, and nowadays that happens even much more quickly. So the first step is to truly know what you're talking about. If you are working on a loan program, you really need to understand what the guidelines require. And when you're asked a question about it, if you don't know the answer, you have to have the guts to say, I don't know, and then get back to them. The benefit of that is several-fold. One, you research and figure out the answer. Two, it gives you an opportunity to call them back and interact again. And three, it gives you a chance to actually deliver on what you promised.
Yeah, and I'd add a fourth, it's that people will respect you for that you didn't try and BS them.
Yeah.
At IBM, I sold computers for IBM when I was a kid, and they drilled in your head the idea that if you didn't know it, what you would, they had a system, and really what you would do is you turn to them and say, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that, but I will get an answer, and I will get back to you at 4 o'clock today. And then we'd have little notebooks, and we would take it out, and we would write down in front of them. So I guess the point of this is that there's no shame in not knowing, but there's a lot of shame when you try and mix it up and start playing games. But don't call back.
Well, and much of what we do, and we could talk about many topics related to the mortgage industry and sales in general, and things seem to be important, at one particular point, but the real important part of that is it's better for you individually. I mean, if you answer if you do something wrong and you can't get the loan done, that's going to put you in an uncomfortable spot. Not to mention the fact that you might not be able to do more business. I think the other thing that's important, and to the extent that you can do this, you should endeavor to know as much about your competition's product as possible. I was on the phone yesterday with somebody who has already applied someplace, and now they're talking to us, and I know everything about the loan that they applied for at the other place. So I can readily compare what I have to offer to what they already have talked to somebody else about. And in fact, in this particular case, I knew more, and I've given them more information already about the loan that they applied for with somebody else. So in addition to trying to help them understand the benefits of my program, they're impacted by my knowledge of the other product. So.
You have, there's a couple, I probably could talk for another half hour, because I'm a yapper, just on this point that you raised. What is interesting about it is that this is the first time I've done probably 160 interviews. This is the first time anybody has ever mentioned that. Out of 160 interviews that I've done, because I know what I've done, I've maintained for years that that every interview has something of value in it. when I first started, and I've said this before, after I did like 20 interviews, I started saying to myself, well, geez, you know, everything's been said here. What am I going to do now? How do I bulk this thing up?
Yeah.
But that's not the way it turned out at all. And I could tell you a couple stories, I won't, but of ideas that have come out that are just amazing, kind of one-on-one ideas. And to further validate that, in a little bit different area, when I was selling computers for IBM, that was a very big thing. IBM had a rule that they've carried to this day, and it's about what's called disparagement. And the idea is